initiate the 2023 legislative day. I'm so glad everyone is here, and we will have more our members coming. So let me welcome our 2023 President Ling Chao to give us a few words.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for coming. We haven't had a Ledge Day for a while, and this has been the first time that we started again because of COVID, right? Because COVID, nobody wants to show up. And now I'm so happy to see all of you. You know, I haven't seen you guys for a long time, and now I get to see you guys again. We have a very important meeting today, so I hope you guys all stay. We have lunch for you, Jersey Mike sandwich, my granddaughter's favorite, and stay throughout the whole meeting because there's a lot of information for you. You might not know it, but there is a lot of things behind the scene at the Capitol and at a federal level as well. So please stay, enjoy your meeting, and hopefully that you guys take back something with you today. It is my pleasure to introduce our GAD. Does anybody know what GAD means?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Eugene. Eugene is our member. He's also a past mayor of San Marino. Okay. Let me again introduce our GAD, our Government Affairs Director, Jim Clarke. And he's going to be presenting for us all day today. He is our staff. So you guys don't know that, but he is working for the WSGVR board very hard to find out issues for us. Okay, let's give a warm welcome to okay,
Thank you, President Ling. I just wanted to kick this off, and I threw a star over there at the former mayor. And we have stress stars today. So if you ask or answer a particular question during the program, somebody's going to be hucking one of these at you. So they're really kind of nice. Anyway, just to go over the program, today we're going to basically feature business and real estate related issues from the California Association of Realtors, the National Association of Realtors, and also an organization that we are members of called the LA County Business Federation, which is very strong in the area and has since moved into the Central Valley and Orange County, but very, very strong advocacy group that is very in tune to real estate because there are so many realtor organizations that are members of BizFed. So just to go over the schedule real quickly, first up, we're going to have Zach Ruben-Mc, who's the manager of RPAC and the advocacy group at NAR, and also is a senior political representative. He covers a couple of states, including California. Next, after that, we will have Sanjay Wagle, who is our senior vice president of government affairs and our chief lobbyist in Sacramento. And then we're going to have a very special guest dropping by probably around 12:20, 12:30 during the lunch break. And that'll be Assemblymember Fong. And then you'll hear from our business, the LA County BizFed, Sarah Wiltfong, who is their director of advocacy and policy. And then I'll come back and talk to you about some good things called fundraising. But anyway, let's just start it off, and I'll introduce Zach. Do we have him on the? Okay, so I mentioned to you who Zach is, and Zach is going to give us a federal update, what's happening at NAR and at the U.S. Capitol.
My name is Zach Ruben-Mc. I wear a few hats here at NAR. One of those jobs is as the political director covering California. So being a liaison to you all, members, and as well as the government affairs and state staff as well, and trying to keep you all updated on all the stuff we're doing on your behalf here in DC. Just kind of jumping in on it. I plan on covering just kind of an update on various legislative activities, some successes that we've had over the last year, and then also look ahead at what we're expecting the next few months to a year, the remainder of this Congress, and then take a look at elections briefly. And then I also wanted to leave time for questions I do realize that that could result in things being thrown at you, but I hope that won't discourage you from asking any questions you may have. All right, so just hopping into the legislative update, in 2022 and even the first half of this year, we've had a lot of great wins. Some of you may recall at the beginning of 2022, emergency rental assistance was a big thing for, our members, many of whom own rental properties, coming off the pandemic and all of the various challenges that they faced through that, getting over $50 billion of rental assistance passed. While it didn't completely pay for all the losses, it did help make some of those people closer to whole. In addition to that, we had the bipartisan transportation bill. There's a ton of funding in that's gone to all sorts of projects that NAR supports, things like rural broadband, increasing funds for improving roads, bridges, other critical infrastructure that help build strong communities that, our members are so expert at, being advocates for. We also, in the funding bills last year, we also had increased funding for affordable housing, fair housing, and with that fair housing, there was increases in funding for enforcement on the fair housing side. And there were a number of other programs NAR cared about, things like the flood insurance program and other commercial focused tax credits. There's a lot of legislation or money that came out of that helped the housing side of things. There was also a really important piece of legislation introduced by actually one of California's congressmen, Jimmy Panetta, called the More Homes on the Market Act. This bill, for those of you who are unfamiliar, it would double the capital gains exclusion on the sale of a home. It's currently $250,000 for an individual and $500,000 for a couple. It would double that and then also peg it to inflation. This is something our research has been showing. There's a lot of people, and I'm sure you've heard from clients like this, who maybe own their house for, and they've paid it off. And, with the price increases over the last few years, all of a sudden they have a lot of potential capital gains that they might have to pay. And, that is preventing them from selling their home because they aren't able to pay that bill, and they might be interested in downsizing. So it's kind of slowed things down in the market. And if you look at historically, if you look at that capital gains exclusion when it was introduced, I want to say it was in '87. If you had just pegged it to inflation, then it would basically be at those numbers now. So it's it's getting things where it should be given the changes in the market. So it's a bipartisan bill. It's something we're very excited about. Congressman Panetta has been a great champion on this. It was reintroduced this Congress. We've been able to help gain some steam on that. So we're hoping it can continue to gain some momentum going into next Congress. The other thing that was a big piece of legislation you may have read about, the Inflation Reduction Act. This was President Biden, one of his signature accomplishments. The main focus of this was mainly a lot of energy policy and climate policy. So while that is typically not as much of the type of policy issues we focus on here at NAR, the one thing that we were really concerned about is how they were going to pay for these programs. The good news is we were able to keep out a lot of things that we care about from being either eliminated or curtailed in some way. Things like the 1031 like-kind exchange remains unchanged. The step up in basis, the capital changes in capital gains rates, all of these things remained unchanged with this legislation passing, which was a big victory. And sometimes, a lot of these are, it's less about passing something and more about preventing something. So this was definitely a big win for us, something that we're very proud of. Looking ahead to this Congress and, kind of what we're living now, the big thing overarching pretty much every legislative discussion are fiscal issues, things like the debt limit that was earlier this year. And now, like once Congress gets back after Labor Day, they're going to be looking at funding for the government for the next year. More long-term, taxes are going to be something that you're going to hear about a lot from us. Housing supply, I'll get into these a little bit more, and then fair housing. These are kind of the big things we've been focused on here. Getting into the fiscal issues, as I mentioned, funding is going to run out later this year on September 31st. This would cause the government to shut down if they don't fund any, if they don't get a funding deal done. This would be a big problem. Things like the flood insurance program would grind to a halt. It would stop deals from going through. If you need like a rural housing loan or a VA loan or any of those sorts of things approved, that would not happen. So there are a lot of direct impacts on the real estate industry and impacts on the broader economy that would not be good from a government shutdown. So we are, in conversations with folks on the Hill, reminding them that there's a lot at stake here. We're optimistic they're able to get a deal, but this is something we don't want to take any chances on. And then, as I mentioned, there was a debt limit earlier this year. All of these deals are a little fraught because Republicans have a very narrow majority in the House. It's only a couple seats. So getting 223 of their members to agree on anything is a tough challenge for Speaker McCarthy. So we'll stay tuned on that, but it's something we're going to be monitoring very closely over the next month. Going into taxes, we're expecting taxes next Congress to be a real big topic of conversation. There's 23 provisions of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that are going to expire at the end of 2025. So a couple of the ones that are getting talked about the most, the state and local tax deduction. Some of you may recall there was a cap placed on that, limiting people to deducting $10,000 of state and local taxes on their federal returns. There's also an increase to the child tax credit that will phase out. There was also a reduction of the income tax rate that will revert back to rates from before the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So there are a number of things that are going to drive people to the bargaining table. So, our strategy has been to get things like the More Homes on the Market Act, the Neighborhood Homes Investment Act, which is something that would help create a tax credit for distressed housing to try and get them up online and livable. A number of different tax provisions. The goal is on our side is to try and get a lot of these things in a really bipartisan place and prepare for this coming debate that's going to come next Congress to make sure NAR, regardless of who's in power, is in a really strong position to advocate for policies that will help the housing market. So stay tuned. I think, for those of you, if I'm back in a year, you'll probably hear me talking more about this, but want to put it on your radar because these things I think are going to be very, very important. And then, as I mentioned, it's an ongoing conversation, but protecting these key tax provisions I mentioned earlier, things like the 1031 like-kind exchange, step up in basis, capital gains rates, all of that. Those are things that are always up for discussion as possible ways to pay for legislation. So it's the type of thing that we have to regularly educate people on and make sure that they understand the importance of those things to the real estate industry. The other big thing, and this dovetails a bit with taxes, but it's housing supply. Our research has shown anywhere between 5.5 and almost 7 million underbuilt in terms of housing units over the last 20 years. Both sides of the aisle are seeing this as an issue, which is great. Really, it's good for us. As an organization, that's where we do some of our best work, is in that bipartisan space. A lot of the solutions we're looking at are tax related, things like the More Homes on the Market Act I mentioned earlier. There are a number of provisions that would help provide resources to local municipalities to revisit their zoning and comprehensive plans to help incentivize people to build more housing. And then the other one that's I would say a little bit more in discussion. There's not quite as many legislative proposals yet, but it's the issue of commercial conversions. So, in places where there's downtowns that might not be as full with workers as they were before COVID, looking at a way to, help update older buildings and bring them back into, regular use. I mentioned fair housing being a big one for us. We're continuing to advocate for more funding for HUD fair housing enforcement programs. As I mentioned, we did get a little bit more last Congress, but continue to bang the drum on that. This will be something that is going to come up over the next month or so as they start debating government funding. We're also supporting legislation that helps close the homeownership gap amongst demographic groups. And then, the other thing is there's a number of bills. Last Congress was the Equality Act. Now it's the Equal and Fair Housing Act to help support folks from discrimination in housing. So that is another piece of legislation that could possibly go through. We'll see, but we're pushing ahead with these. Keeping an eye on elections. Last cycle was an awesome cycle for RPAC. We won nearly 98% of the races that RPAC got involved in. There was 418 congressional, so House and Senate races that RPAC got involved in. As a kind of comparison, traditionally incumbent candidates at the federal level win 94% of the time. So we outperformed an incumbent candidate, which is a hard thing to do, which was great. And if you look at the funding that we gave out, we were 50-50 in the money that RPAC gave between Republicans and Democrats. So it was a very good cycle from the election side of things. And I'd also note we did not and do not get involved in any sort of presidential race. We don't endorse candidates. So if you ever get asked that question, now you know. Looking ahead, as I mentioned, things in the House are very tight. Speaker McCarthy only has a couple seat majority. There's a number of seats that that are currently in Republican control that Democrats think they should have. So I think it's going to be very, very close in the House. On the Senate side, Democrats currently have a 1-seat majority. They do have 20 of 33 senators that are up for re-election are Democrat, a number of whom are in very tough races. So I think it might be tough for Democrats to hold on to the Senate, but we'll see. The other thing is, if anybody turned on their TV earlier this week, there's already a Republican presidential debate. We're starting to get into presidential election season, which is going to make it a lot harder to get funding, not just funding, but any sort of legislation done in Congress. You're going to have a number of people who are running, who are going to be on the road, who aren't going to be around to vote. And in a very, very tight Congress, it's going to, every vote really matters. So it's going to be a very interesting year of elections. We're monitoring this very closely. In my other role, I help staff our RPAC disbursement trustees. So I know they're gearing up, and they'll be spending quite a bit of time monitoring these things and making sure RPAC is making very prudent, smart, and strategic decisions to support realtor candidates across the country. But with that, I just want to say thank you for having me. Thanks, Jim, for the opportunity. And put up my contact information here. I am a resource to you all. I know Jim knows how to reach me, but if any of you have questions about federal policy or anything else like that comes up, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Thank you, Zach. That was actually more than I expected. It's so much good news, especially that legislation by Jimmy Panetta.
Yeah.
When I heard that the capital gains tax exemption could be doubled. I mean, think about that. It would just drive people, give them more incentive to buy homes, because it's almost like an IRA. But anyway, does anybody have any questions?
We had a rental property in Las Vegas, and my sister and I decided to sell it. We paid $44,000 in capital gains.
Wow.
Yeah, so 100% agree with you.
Okay. Sandra, you get a star. Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Saw a lot of people taking. I did pitch in Little League, but anyway. Anybody else? Well, Zach, you're getting off easily. Did you ever fix your camera, by the way?
I may have, I'm seeing my face on the screen. I don't know if I appeared there, but
Oh, I see you.
big screen, I'll save you all.
It's a little tiny little screen. Anyway, okay, so no more questions for Zach. We're gonna let him go this easy, huh? Well, great news. I know people took copious notes, so we will be sending you our contributions to help with the big fight. And I guess you're free to go. You want to stick around and listen to the rest of the presentation, you're more than welcome.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thanks, Jim.
Okay. Okay, next up, we're running a little ahead of schedule, but our next speaker is here. And he is your chief lobbyist in Sacramento, senior vice president for government affairs, Sanjay Wagle. And are you ready, Sanjay?
So I was asked to also give some information about myself for those of you who may not have seen me on anything. My name is Sanjay Wagle. I'm the senior vice president of government affairs for the California Association of Realtor and the chief lobbyist. I've been with C.A.R. now 20 years. Mostly I was, thank you.
Started when he was 12.
No, thank you. And I actually started in the legal department in Los Angeles. So I'm an attorney with, I used to be with C.A.R. as member of legal for, I think that was about 13 years. And I moved up to Sacramento for this position about 7 years ago. And my Southern California roots are bipartisan, just like the Realtor Party. My master's is from UCLA, my law degree is from USC. So, again, I Realtor Party, purple, I don't take a position on it. And my undergraduate was University of Chicago. So today I'm going to do a legislative update. I don't have many slides. The slides which I'll talk about toward the end are two of our hot issues right now. And so I'm going to go into those, and those are, one of them is a very possible red alert. As you know, with our red alerts, I'm sure everybody's familiar. Red alerts are basically the equivalent of what's the federal calls to action. Basically, call your legislator, email your legislator, get in contact with them somehow. But those are targeted, right? Because if somebody's with us, we don't necessarily target them, right? Why? They're with us. Sometimes, unless we have a strategic reason to do it, we're not going to target a lost cause either. There's sometimes strategic reasons to do that, but generally we're not going to target a lost cause. And it's the people in the middle who are swayable or who could influence their colleagues, maybe, who we will do a red alert for. But I'll talk about those in a bit. I'm just going to talk generally about a couple of issues. Zach talked about the political climate. I don't talk about that much because unless it's escaped anybody here, we're a deep blue state. Okay. And I'm using the blue for Democrat, red for Republican. And keep in mind, whenever I speak about political issues, like about the party breakdown, about et cetera, this is not meant to reflect any kind of partisan bias. It's just an analysis of what the situation is, and the party is with us. We are the Realtor Party. We really are. We are the biggest business group in Sacramento by far. And one of the reasons for our effectiveness, although sometimes it can be challenging, is that we really are perceived as bipartisan, right? We are, unlike many of the other business groups who are perceived as having a distinct Republican lean, we really are seen as the group that works with both sides. So in terms of it being a deep blue state, what does that mean? It means every constitutional office, governor, lieutenant governor, treasurer, attorney general, everything is controlled by a Democrat. And honestly, that's not likely to change. Okay, I'm just bluntly, statistically unlikely to change, unless, which some Republican consultants in Sacramento always hope, a self-funded independent. That would probably be the most likely scenario where a Democrat would not be able to win one of those offices. Would be a well-funded independent who does not run, who would run as what's called no party preference. The closest we had to something like that was about 6 years ago for insurance commissioner. A former Republican ran as no party preference and came very close. He was really rich, and a lot of people on the business side were, if he just kicked in another 5 or 10 mil, he probably could have won that, right? But he didn't, and he lost. But that's the most likely scenario. And I'm doing that again. That's why I quickly warn about nonpartisan, partisan, because this isn't meant to be like, oh yeah, yay, it's more that this is just the way it is. Like statistically speaking, based on polling at this moment, it's likely all constitutional offices at the next election cycle are likely to be Democratic. The legislature is also extremely Democratic. It is more than 2/3, which means supermajority Democratic in both the Senate and the Assembly. And what does that mean? In the Senate, it is 33-7 currently, okay? And what do you need for supermajority, which means taxes or constitutional amendments? You need 24. So Democrats have 33. Even for a 2/3 bill, they only need 24. In the Assembly, and this is always to me the biggest eye opener, 63-17. Okay, so 63 Democrats, 17 Republicans. And so that is the situation. Is that likely to change? Honestly, it's a little unpredictable, mainly because of the presidential race. In this state, and again, this is just based on current polling, so it's not meant things change all the time. If it is Trump versus Biden, it would make it very challenging for the Republicans to make inroads in the Assembly because he drives Democratic turnout in this state, drives Democratic and independent turnout significantly, and depresses Republican suburban turnout. So that's the problem with this candidacy. I spoke to an Assembly person who actually, I live in probably one of the few purple areas in the state of California, the suburb I live in, where it's actually tightly contested for the Assembly between Democrat and Republican. The way you can think about that is when we get mailers, both parties don't identify who they're with. they both do not put R or D. They just sort of as if they're just there because they know we're very purple and kind of in the center where I live. But I was talking to one of the analysts around there, and we were talking about the presidential race, and I said the particular suburb I live in used to be very Republican, has gone, I would say, truly purple. It's gotten a lot bluer, partly because there's tech that's kind of coming into that area. And I said, you know, it was interesting because you could see from the results that people were voting Republican except for Trump, right? Because in certain districts, it was very Republican, but he was winning by very small margins or losing. And this was his comment. He goes, yeah, educated Republicans don't like him. And he goes, that's our challenge. And I was like, okay, well, that's the challenge. But that's the whole thing. If it's not him, even if it's somebody really conservative, the dynamic changes, right? Because suddenly the dynamic's different. Even if it's really conservative, it's something about him in particular that drives turnout. Okay, so in this state, just the way it drives turnout on the other side, maybe in Ohio or other places, right? In this state, it really drives Democratic turnout. On the other hand, and this is what's throwing doubts, is this is a race that nobody wants if it's Trump and Biden again, right? Like, so that might just depress overall turnout if everybody's just depressed by that whole prospect. So these are some of the questions, but the overall parameters are unlikely to change. So where's the battle? The battle is really for moderates of both parties. The business groups like ourselves, that's who we push for, is moderates. In a lot of races, I think it was 20 of them last time, I could be wrong on that number, ended up being Democrat versus Democrat because of the way our primary system works. And so who are we favoring? And along with the business community, moderate Democrats. In areas where it's Republican versus Republican, we will favor the moderate Republican. Mainly because on both sides, those are ones who care about business, right? The extreme left, they've got their own agenda, they don't care. And actually the extreme right has their own agenda, which hinges more on social issues these days than it does on the sort of business issues. And given the size of the Republicans, we really need them to be the kind who can work with the moderate Democrats to kind of create this moderate, kind of a moderate caucus, if you will. There's what's called a problem solvers caucus in Sacramento, which is made up of moderate Democrats and moderate Republicans who try to work together. And if you think in terms of tension between the parties, the one thing I can say based on our trips to DC, because we do make trips and talk to NAR, the Republicans and Democrats at least talk to each other and are pretty civil in Sacramento. They actually, in that way, get along. It's not like it is in DC, where we actually spoke to Congressman Obernolte. Do you remember what area? Orange County?
Yeah, he's Riverside.
Riverside. And he talked about, he goes, yeah, come in here, because he was in California. legislature, and he said, yeah, this was a real difference. He goes, we might disagree in California, but I was able to talk to the Democrats. And there's a Democrat who was in the legislature who he owns, I think he owns his own plane, the Republican Overnolte. And he said, I was like, hey, you're going to California, let's go together. And he said a bunch of his colleagues are like, why are you flying with him? What are you taking him there for? And he's like, well, we know each other. I mean, we're friendly. We don't agree on anything, but we're friendly. And so it's that tenor which we do not have in California. People generally it's pretty civil. So that's the political, that's the shorthand. I'm not going into any particular races. The battles you'll see where we've done independent expenditures, meaning when I say we are a political action committee, which means where we spend independent of the campaign on behalf or favor, is frankly been in favor of moderate Democrats against extreme left Democrats. That's the fight. All through the Bay Area is that fight. And I'm sort of throwing that out there just because I do get questions from various parts of the state saying, why in the world would you have supported X candidate? She's terrible on rent control. Well, she's terrible on rent control, but she works with us on supply. She doesn't want transfer taxes, things like that. And the opponent would have been a war, or maybe might not even speak to us, that kind of thing. Like, I don't take realtor money. I don't like the real, So these are some of it seems more prevalent, despite some of the policies that are coming out of LA. The sort of those kind of candidates in the legislature tend to be more from the Bay Area, where huge independent expenditures to try to stop them from being defeated by a much more left-wing Democrat. So that's the political situation. Given that political situation, we've actually had a pretty good year. So, and I'm going to talk about those two. Well, actually, let me start with these two, and then I'll talk about the year as a whole. So we were coming into this part of the year, which is normally quite busy and hectic, thinking, oh, well, we've only got one major issue, and maybe we can really concentrate on that because we don't have a whole lot of other pressing issues. Well, there's always quote unquote shenanigans that occur in the end of our session. We have a month left, and going to be talking about those right now. So the first one is ACA 1. This is not shenanigans. This has been an ongoing battle for us. Just make sure. Sorry. Yeah. So ACA 1 is a constitutional amendment. So what that means is the legislature is trying to get a constitutional amendment placed on the ballot. They need 2/3 to get that through to be put on the ballot. So it's a challenge. That's why we're able to actually be in the fight on this. If it was a pure majority vote, we probably would not have succeeded. What this does is it would reduce the vote requirement needed to pass affordable housing and infrastructure bonds. And I'll talk about what that means. And so we're asking you to talk to your assembly members and senators to vote no, but we're not yet in the full mobilization because it's not at that stage yet. Sorry. So what would this do? It would reduce the vote requirement from 2/3, where it is currently, to 55% to pass affordable housing bonds and infrastructure projects. Now, C.A.R. actually has policy that would support, our board of directors has in the past taken policy that would support the reduction to 55%, just as we have policy to support 55% for school bonds for housing, but not for infrastructure. So if they would drop the infrastructure component, we would go away on this issue, but they're not. They're keeping that they want to reduce it to 55% also for infrastructure. So affordable housing, that's fine. Not fine, but we wouldn't object to a reduction in the threshold for that. The problem is infrastructure. It would include, but is not limited to, water, sanitary sewer, wastewater protection of property from impacts of sea level rise, parks and recreation facilities, open space, improvements to transit and streets and highway, flood control, broadband internet access, service expansion, local hospital construction, public safety buildings, public libraries. Now look, all of those things, they're not bad things, right? But if you want them taxed, like taxed generally, our problem with this is that what this does is if you do the bonds on the local level for this, where do those taxes go? They go onto property, right? They're property, they're parcel tax. They are special taxes that will go on property. And that's our problem with it, right? If the government said, we're gonna tax everyone for libraries and all these wonderful things, we would not actually weigh in on that. That's not our fight because it doesn't target what we do and what our homeowners and our clients and you and everybody who owns a home is affected by. That's our objection to this. So that's why we are strongly opposing the reduction in the vote threshold for infrastructure spending. In the past, I said our board of directors was okay with reducing it for housing just because there's such a housing problem. And look, speaking, sort of inside ball, what if they said, which we've had sort of I feel comfortable because these are backroom discussions which are open enough that it's not the end of the world if somebody leaked it, which is we've had discussions about, well, what if you limited it to just housing on the infrastructure, like infrastructure for housing, but not this whole panoply of things, no bites. So that's why right now we're just opposing it. Well, we're still willing to consider the amendments and we're floating it, but it's tight. If this was still not a fight, this would have been up for a vote and done. So we're still fighting it, and she is struggling to get her 2/3, meaning the Assemblymember Aguirre Curry. The reason you can tell is we heard through the grapevine that she actually approached a Republican to try to get his vote. So the fact that they approached a Republican to try to get a vote, and if that seems curious, it's because also we've seen, it's interesting, Republicans are sometimes, depending on the area, they're just really tied into their cities. And some of the cities are like, we want easier access to be able to do this. And our communities are conservative enough that they probably wouldn't vote for it if it's no good. So don't worry about it, just give us the power, right? But so this is where we are right now. This is not in red alert status or call that, of anything yet, but just something to be aware of, something we are opposed to. We have not floated formally, like, hey, if you amend it, we'll back off. We're just right now in this more oppositional stance and we're sort of working it in Sacramento, but just something to keep in your mind. And again, we don't oppose public library facilities, local hospital construction. Again, the problem is it shouldn't be done on the backs of homeowners, right? Use the general budget funds. And that's our other point is Newsom had a huge infrastructure spend in the new budget. So it's in the budget. Why are you doing this? Right? Okay, so ACA 3 ward. This is something we are, it is possible. That we're still formulating lists. This is very fast, and I'll talk about how this happened. We are in strong opposition to this. And this is ACA 13. This would, in our view, weaken Prop 13, potentially weaken Prop 13, and it definitely limits voter influence and ballot initiatives. So why is this happening right now? This is such a big deal. I'll talk about this. There's a process. Technically, the bills were all introduced and passed, and if they passed or failed, that's supposed to be done. We're just supposed to be debating bills that were introduced. There's always ways to do things. There's something called a gut and amend, where you take a bill that's just floating around and you completely change it. You amend it so much that it's a new bill, and that's what they did. This just was introduced Friday. And so why is this bill now, and what does it do? The California Business Roundtable has introduced an initiative, and they've qualified it for the ballot, that would severely limit the government's authority to impose taxes without the vote of the people. Now, normally, would C.A.R. be particularly involved in something that's a generic tax measure? If it was a generic tax measure, no, we would not. So if it's just about income tax, we generally will not weigh in unless it's specifically to property, like the federal capital gains for housing or something like that. But again, general taxes, like tax rates, we don't get involved in. But there is a provision in Prop 13 in the Constitution that says that there's going to be new property taxes, special taxes, excuse me, that would affect property. It requires a 2/3 vote of the local jurisdiction to have that happen. And it had been understood that that was 2/3, period, until the California Supreme Court said, no, it's 2/3 if the government puts it on the ballot. But if a citizen or a group, an outside group, puts it in the ballot, it's just 50%, it's just a majority, a simple majority. Hence, ULA. That's why you have ULA in Los Angeles. If the city of Los Angeles had put that on the ballot, it would have taken 2/3 and it would have lost.
So do you tell them what ULA is?
Oh, I'm sorry. I guess I just picked LA. It creates an incredibly high transfer tax. I think it's 10%.
Yeah, 5 million and 10 million goes higher.
Yeah, so at 5 million and 10 million, it's a significant transfer tax. I want to say 5 and 10% or something like that. It's really high. And so don't tell them this, the other side, which is weirdly, it's so high that it's basically stopped the market there. Completely stopped it, as everybody now tries to figure out ways around it, putting it into different structures. What do I do? How is there some way around this? And actually, even Karen Bass, the mayor there, I believe, has said we're not going to touch the funds until the lawsuits resolve, because there's all these lawsuits about it right now as well. Because I think, and I don't think that normally she would have, I think she's sensitive to the political climate. I mean, just bluntly, a lot of her supporters are now affected by this. And, but that's an example of the type of law that passed with, I think, 55%, which normally would have required a 2/3 had that traditional interpretation of Prop 13 still been around. But because that court did that, what the Business Roundtable's initiative would do would be to undo that court case. It would say, no, it's 2/3 for everything, just like what people thought Prop 13 was supposed to be. So the legislature decides, oh, that initiative actually qualified for the ballot. It might actually pass, right? Because to pass on the state level, it just needs a simple majority. Most people, even in a very democratic state, are frankly not that keen on taxes, and might in fact go, well, if it's a good tax, I will vote for it. So give me the chance to vote for it, right? And property, yeah, maybe should be 2/3 because it's a homeowner and we don't want to make the homes even less affordable than they are. So the legislature, seeing that, goes, oh, let's do this. If a citizen-led initiative is done, if you want to make something go up to 2/3, then no longer do you need a simple majority of Californians to vote for the initiative. You would need 2/3 of the voters to vote for the initiative. Big change in our law. And the legislature for their initiatives don't have to do that. Okay, so if the legislature said, oh, we want 3/4 to make any changes. If you ever want to change any environmental rule, it's a 3/4 vote. They could do it. But if a citizen wanted to, it would be a 3/4. So what they're basically trying to kill this other initiative this way. Okay. We oppose this for obvious reasons. First of all, just from our policy, from our narrow policy point of views, look, people should be able to, if they think it's appropriate, the majority of people can make a decision that, you know what, this is okay. We'll let you tax certain things. But you know, that's a really serious tax. Maybe the government and the people should really, that should be a big decision. Let's make sure that a supermajority of people are going to do that, right? So that, why can't they do that? And so that's being basically stripped away from this. So that's our core issue. Like you're stripping away the ability of people to do this. That's why we're involved. Also so in the future, even leave aside Prop 13, let's say our board of directors or just a group of citizens decided again that we wanted even sort of for progressive things, for fair housing legislation or other types of things, consumer protections for people. We said, you know what, something like that should be a 3/4 vote to change any fair housing. No, we wouldn't be, it would take 3/4 of the voters to do that. So we'll see what happens. Right now in the speaker's office, it's going to be, the speaker has weighed in on it, so it's going to be very challenging to defeat this in the assembly, but we are going to try. And there is, and this is politics, everybody, there's going to be different messaging for your Republican than your Democrats on this one, because Republicans are instinctively going to be like, oh, this is so transparent. You're trying to stop the business-sponsored initiative. We're not okay with that. And so they're most likely just going to vote no because of that. On the Democratic side, this is labor pushing this. They're afraid of this initiative and they're afraid it will hurt funding on local levels. And so it's basically labor, the labor unions, which are strong. And actually a lot of cities, a ton of cities have also weighed in saying, we don't want to be constrained in this way. So, meaning that they're afraid of a loss of revenue from that initiative. So they are also supporting this bill. But on the other hand, it puts the Democrats in the legislature in a very uncomfortable position And I think they also realize, even if they pass it in the Senate and it gets through and it gets on the ballot, which would go on the March ballot, it is gonna, if there's money to fight it, it's gonna be very challenging for them to get it passed. Because, and this is this is gonna be messaging for the Democratic members of the legislature. Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, Missouri, North Dakota, and just recently Ohio have all tried to raise their vote thresholds for citizen initiatives. Those are all very Republican states, right? So, and what were all the Democrats across the country saying? How dare you try to raise the vote threshold just because you don't want an abortion law, which is most of it's been done for abortion, right? Because they knew the majority of their citizens would actually vote for abortion protections. So they tried to make it harder to make that happen, right? It just happened in Ohio where a pro-choice group put it on the ballot to make abortion, to protect certain abortion rights. The Republicans were like, let's change the Constitution to make it a 60% requirement so that maybe they would lose. But overwhelmingly, people rejected that. And that's going to be, frankly, the messaging against the Democrats. It's like, wait a minute, your national leaders are talking about democracy, thwarting the will of the people, and now you're doing it? And that's going to be a compelling message, frankly. The ads write themselves. And I think your even liberal voter in the state of California is going to be like, yeah, what the hell? What? You don't want me to vote on taxes? You want to strip away my rights? It's going to be very challenging, but I think labor is putting a lot of pressure, so it's happening. Let's see what happens in the Senate. We're still, why are we making the effort? Like if it was a complete lost cause, we maybe would say, okay, it's not worth the effort. But in this case, first of all, we don't have a lot of stuff we're fighting. So we have the opportunity to fight on this. Even if we lose, we need to make it clear, because basically by making a strong effort and they perceive us as being able to raise money, they'll realize like, oh, this isn't something you'll just stick on the ballot and because nobody's raising money against it, it's going to win, right? You stick it on the ballot, there's going to be opposition from well-funded and influential groups with tons of members who are going to raise a stink. And unlike some, and this goes back to my original conversation about us being a bipartisan group working with both Republican and Democrats, unlike some of those groups, they can't just write us off as, oh, well, they're this far right group or something. They can't, because we are in every community. We are friends with both parties everywhere. And it's very credible. We have very prominent Democrats. We have very prominent Republicans within our ranks who will be out there saying, how dare you thwart the will? Right. So, but we're hoping to stop it in the legislature. So that's where we are right now. And that one we will be red alerting. Again, whether or not your specific district is a target for it is unknown at this point. But almost everywhere will, because we think a lot of the Democrats are going to feel enormous pressure in the assembly to just vote for it. Our main goal there would be get them to not vote, which is the same for us. So that's where we are on all of these things. Do I have time?
Yes.
Okay.
Plenty.
Then I'm also going to talk about, and I'll take a lot of questions too, but I'm also going to just talk about our year, which has actually been, as I said, and I always we had a good year last year too, legislatively, and I don't always want to sound surprised because it is a result of a lot of work by everybody that, that's how we get there, right? Is by working really hard on all these things. But the numbers, right? The numbers are so challenging for us in terms of the political parties but it's, and we get a lot of new members, but there really is, in my view, the moderate side, there's enough moderate Democrats at this point that on things like taxes, and other aspects, and I'll talk about rent in a second, where it is more complicated. On a lot of our issues, there's enough of them, the moderate side, to go, okay, yeah, no, I'm not doing that. Because they're afraid, frankly, if they vote for taxes, first of all, a lot of them just don't like taxes. And bluntly, when you meet with some of these people, I remember when I first started up in Sacramento, I would meet with legislators, we'd meet with all of them. And I would be thinking to myself, in a different era, like 20 years ago, you would have just been a moderate Republican. But they're actually really moderate, kind of pro-business, but they can't get elected as a Republican, right? And so they're a Democrat. And there are others, there's a Assemblymember in San Diego, Manshine, who was a Republican, right? Who switched parties. And he was that kind of, in the past, there were lots of him and lots of these sort of center Republicans And there's all sorts of reasons for this, but a lot of them have now just become Democrats, frankly. Just because that's how you win, but their inclinations are the same. They don't really like taxes. They don't like a lot of this too much government intervention. And so they're supportive of us on a lot of tax issues and things like that, or our transactional issues. Where we do run into trouble with some of them is frankly rent. I mean, that's just political calculus. I think with a lot of them is just there's so much pressure at different times on the rent issue. And we're going to be doing more things in terms of trying to establish, and we have to be careful here, but increasingly we're kind of becoming, we used to just be kind of with CAA, landlord rights, housing provider rights, housing provider rights. And we're still that way, but I think we are getting a little bit of a nuance where we're now, our arguments do center on the smaller owner, right? Like the mom and pop owner who owns a couple of units. That's been the focus of our attention more. And part of that is because big entities, frankly, don't mind or are willing to do, if they can see that it'll still work out in the aggregate, they're sometimes okay with some of the stuff, right? They're more willing to sort of compromise or go, let's run the numbers, we can live with it. You know, and so we're sort of now pushing more, and a lot of our arguments with the legislature have been in that vein. And the one thing I also wanted to talk about with home ownership, I mentioned moderate Democrats, but another area where we've had a lot of success is with all the sort of ethnic caucuses, because Black caucus, Hispanic caucus, again, home ownership, right? Because one of the arguments, which I call it almost a liberal paradox here, because you have, especially again in the Bay Area, this push for, well, why do we need all this home ownership housing? You could just have social housing, which would be, you could rent forever and you'd have a nice life and all this thing. And our rebuttal, which puts that side on the defensive, is okay. So when it was largely a white state, everybody got great home ownership opportunities, which have allowed them the security and wealth appreciation that come from home ownership, which has benefited their kids, their communities, themselves. And now that our state has a diverse population buying, 37% of buyers, the largest number of buyers were Latino, 37. No, we don't need home ownership anymore. And that is like, no, we're not saying that. And it does cause everybody's backs to come up and go, oh, no, we're not saying that. And if the big push is basically that home ownership is part of fair housing, right? For groups that have been denied opportunities in the past, to say they don't get them now is like blatantly not okay. And it does put people on the defensive, and it does work, again, to advocate for home ownership. Okay, so let me go through our year real quick. And as I said, I keep saying surprising. It's because it's so challenging that we're always like, we did it, we won. So I'm going to go through some of the things we've done this year. Opposition, we've had a lot of stuff in the Bay Area. I'm going to talk about a bill called Costa-Hawkins. I'm not sure how familiar everybody is with that. What that is in broad strokes, it's a bill, it's a law in California that says if you're going to have rent control, it's constrained. It can only apply to buildings built prior to 1995, unless that city had a rent control ordinance at that time. So in LA, City of Los Angeles, only from before 1978. So there's constraints on the rent control. You have to have vacancy decontrol, which seems intuitive, meaning if once the unit becomes voluntarily vacant, you can raise it to the market rent. It used to be prior to that law that they even limited that, right? So these are very important things for our association. We, along with the Apartment Association, were the people who basically got that into law many years ago, 1995. It's a constant attempt to erode it. That's constant. So SB 466 by Alicia Wahab, who's a thorn in our side, is she's one of those extreme left Democrats. They spent an awful lot of money to try to stop, and she still got in. That was a hot issue at our legislative day, in Sacramento, which I would invite everybody to come to. They march across the street and talk to legislators, and that was the hot issue. Do not pass this bill. It died. Okay, so that died completely. We were very happy on that. There was another bill she had, which two horrible bills. She had two more horrible bills. One which was going to establish a statewide rental registry with the Secretary of State. We were able to stop that. And one which would have completely banned the use of criminal background check in rental housing. And we strongly oppose that, and that also died. By the way, just on the criminal history issue for housing providers, we are not there are strong moves to limit the use of criminal history. We do not oppose all some of those restrictions. But we sometimes will work with a group that want to limit to some extent, but all the groups like this, like her attempt, go too far. So we've been fighting all those bills. And what's funny is there was one bill that came close to a compromise that we could have lived with, but then they wouldn't give it to us, so we opposed it, and it died because we opposed it, and then the far side who don't want any, we both opposed it, so it died. Like both groups, it stopped the compromise basically. So that would have stopped. So her three terrible rent bills all went down to defeat. SB 567 is a bill that's still going on and we're still opposing, along with the Apartment Association, which would make some changes to just cause protections. It's kind of nuanced. It would just make things much more difficult to get family move-ins in certain circumstances. We're still opposed. We fought it as a red alert when it was in the Senate, and it barely passed. And so you might think it barely passed. It still passed. When it barely passes in a Democratic legislature and it's a rent bill, it passes out weak. So she's trying to compromise with the Apartment Association and ourselves. We will never remove our opposition, but it's been significantly weakened, and it might weaken to the point that it would not be a major mobilization. And again, kind of getting into the politics of things, you might have a bill that's still bad. And they might say, well, how about this? We'll make it better, and we can do this. But it might do that, but we're not going to support it, and we're never gonna go, okay, that's okay, because we just don't like it. And so, we can only go so far on some of those bills because we're never going to support their bill, but it's sufficient that it gets weakened to the point that while we might still oppose it, we can't really go to war with it because it's not an insane bill anymore. But those three Wahab bills that I mentioned, rental registry, criminal history, and affecting Costa-Hawkins, would have been wars, and we were able to stop all three. Are you guys familiar with Topa Copa?
Still my
I don't know if that's pending anywhere.
It is.
But they constantly try to do statewide. We were once again able to stop that from moving on a statewide level. So that has also stopped again. There is something, and you're going to see more of this probably happening. And this is a bill we were able to help, not just us in this case, stop, but it's likely to come back next year, which is looking at how algorithms could have a discriminatory effect. So potentially you might have an algorithm that generates that might be used, and they're actually, it affects us because of rental, but also mortgage. They're more concerned about the mortgage side, that maybe you say, oh, well, here's an automated decision tool, go forth and use it, and then, oh, wait a minute, it's actually having a profound discriminatory effect. How do you address that? The banks are going to be the lead on that because that's a lot of the stuff on the algorithms. We are involved in those conversations, but our probably biggest aspect of this is to fight any attempt, which the bill that in print would have done, is to say, like, our position is that's something for the tech companies, the banks, and all you guys to figure out. The person who administers or uses that, like the realtor, the property manager, the owner, how are they supposed to evaluate an algorithm, right? You've maybe got 5 people you're dealing with. How are you supposed to evaluate that it's a problem? So as to really exempt and remove the end user who they've been trying to also put into it from that. So how can that person assess what there's no tech, figuring out the algorithmic effect of a program. So we've opposed that. She understood our opposition and the other opposition, and they're going to keep working on it. So it's not dead yet. There was also a bill under current law. you can have a residential care facility in a residential neighborhood, 6 people, and that's considered a residential use of the property, right? No, you don't need special permits for it. There was a bill that would have stripped that away and said, all bets are off. Any amount of people, as long as it's a residential care facility, can go into any neighborhood. We oppose that. Again, we don't oppose residential care facilities, but we're like, well, at that point, it's a commercial use, right? It's not. If you have 20 people in the middle of a residential neighborhood, that's not a residential use anymore. Let's not pretend it's now a commercial use, or you're up zoning the whole area. That's a whole different discussion. You shouldn't just have a by right. We almost reached a compromise there, but that fell apart, and the bill fell apart too. Finally, this was a strong opposition for us. The bill is not dead, but I don't see it how it moves forward. It would have imposed a 15% tax on the owners of short-term rentals. So Airbnb, any of those VRBO, any platform would have been a 15% tax. At first, again, this is sponsored by labor. It would have generated money for some sort of housing fund. We were able to stop it. In the initial, it was strange. In the beginning, it was us who was really the only opposition. And then toward the end, Airbnb, VRBO, all of them joined in. And it stalled. And she's like, I might bring it back. I think there's still some use, some merit. I don't see it really moving forward, but it's something we were very concerned about. And had it kept moving forward, frankly, probably would have been a red alert. Because a 15% tax is frankly ridiculous. So we would have probably gone on that one. But that one is also one where I actually, there's sometimes you can identify. That one I think we would have actually, if somehow it had gone through the legislature, I think the governor would have vetoed it. Because we're a state that depends on tourism, right? All of a sudden, you're taking off affordable ways to visit the state of California. And I actually think the governor would have probably vetoed that. But so those were a lot of our victories this year. And again, it's sometimes it's like, oh, we did it, but each one is exhausting. Each one takes a ton of effort. In coalition by ourselves, but it's very, very taxing. But yeah, so it's been another year, and so what I identified earlier is what we're left with for this year. The other thing I just wanted to mention, it wasn't a bill per se, but California Dream for All, which is the Senate Pro Tem's program, which has been approved by the legislature, which funds a down payment assistance program, which I am aware did not get as much use in Southern California because of the way the program was initially done, which they just rolled it out. So first come, first served without any regional, and it ended up being very much tilted toward Northern California. When they roll out additional funds, so in the governor's proposed budget, there was supposed to be $500 million for it this year. $300 million disappeared in 11 days, something like that. That the use was that fast. And it's possible that they were going to cut that from the budget. They were going to cut the remaining $200 million. It was, again, a legislative issue, hot issue for us. They did end up restoring the funding, so that was a big win. They haven't rolled it out because the Department of Housing realizes there were problems in the way it was rolled out, and they're trying to figure out a way to make it more regional, get into different communities, just make a more effective program. I honestly, even though they should have been aware of it, I don't think they realized it would be like gone that fast. I just don't think they thought about it. The one big thing about this program, which is the California Dream for All, and why we're strong supporters of it, is that it is not, it's a self-sustaining program in the sense that it's a down payment. It's basically the state of California takes an equity share in the property. So when the property is sold, the state of California gets its down payment back as well as a small share of the appreciation or upon refinance. So it's not a giveaway, and that's why we've also had a lot of Republican support on it. It's like, oh yeah, it's not a giveaway. It's an investment in the state of California and their citizens. And a lot of that has been, which I think probably many of you experience, which is people might have a decent enough income to pay and sustain a home, but getting a down payment is really hard, right? To save up that down payment assistance, even if you have a great job and can afford the payment, you can't get in. So it's possible that we might see more things about California Dream for All, attempts to fund it. We've been just throwing around an idea, we'll have to see, about allowing maybe big corporations to put in, like maybe like Facebook, this is just an idea, we're kind of spitballing this, like, you could have Google or Facebook in Santa Clara say, you know what, in our area, we'll fund a dream for all, the state of California can administer it. Or in a given area, a series of corporations that want housing, to get more housing and people to afford housing could put it in that and the state could administer it. So we're thinking about some ideas that might make that program really self-sustaining, as well as get corporate California more involved. So that's where we stand, and I'm happy to take any questions. So we're fighting the good fight, and we're actually doing shockingly well. So
I think, we think it's great. Yeah, give Sanjay a hand. And some of that goes to your team too, so pass that along. Are there any questions?
Remember our proposition that we passed.
19.
Howard Jarvis is trying to come back and to work something against the inherited part of that. Can you describe what?
Yeah, well, the Howard Jarvis organization, and I think maybe one or two others with them, has submitted for signatures an initiative that actually would reverse many of the aspects of Proposition 19. Well, it would keep, it would keep most of Proposition 19, but then restore some of the tax advantages that were taken away in Proposition 19. Yeah. I think the problem, just realistically, that Jarvis is going to have is getting the money for the signatures. Signature gathering right now is very expensive. So I forget the number that you need of signatures, but it's probably you're going to need to spend about $10 to $11 million to get the signatures. And that's a lot of money. So just that's, oh, and I'm sorry, do we have a second?
Hi, Sanjay. This is Tomas. I have a question going back to what you covered with the AC 13. I was told via email that it's going to go through the Assembly Appropriation Committee this Monday, and our Assembly member is one of the members in that committee.
Okay.
So my question to you: can you describe and elaborate a little bit more? What is the time lapse, or what is the cycle that goes through?
Yeah,
to move further, to go to the Senate, and that's, I think this is very important for us to understand the cycle of each individual bills.
Sure.
That's my question.
So this was introduced in the Assembly. So it goes first to a committee. So it went to Assembly Elections Committee, where it did pass. It went from election, it goes then to appropriations, because anything that has, I think it's $45,000, $60,000 effect on the budget has to go to committee, and they assess it for appropriations. Basically, the Secretary of State will look at, well, how much would this cost the state, or what are the change? How much will this change cost the state of California? If the amount is not significant enough, and frankly, because the Speaker of the Assembly is involved, chances are, if it moves forward from appropriations, it then goes to the Assembly floor. And there could be a second red alert at that time, because that's the whole Assembly at that point. Okay. Let's say it passes out of there, then it goes to the Senate, it goes to the equivalent Elections Committee in the Senate. And then from there to Senate appropriations to the Senate floor. Since it's a constitutional amendment, the governor does not have to sign. So the legislature passes it, it will be on the March ballot. The one thing which also, by the way, for its chances of success, if let's say they pass it, is that it's going to be on the March ballot. That's not the general election ballot, which the whole world is very strange politically in terms of it. So it's hard to make predictions. Traditionally, that would not be a good ballot for the Democrats or for liberal if they're trying to push a liberal angle to it, because frankly, there is basically no Democratic presidential primary, right? It's Biden. And I don't know how excited people are about the Senate race. Like, do people care that much whether it's Chip or Porter? I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. But the Republican side is totally motivated. They've got all these candidates. It's a really big deal. They're going to be voting in huge numbers on that, most likely, because they're going to come out to vote for their preferred candidate, DeSantis, Trump, whoever, right? So that turnout is likely to be high. Democratic turnout most likely to be low because it's not an exciting race for them. So that's just something to keep in mind. But that's the process. Governor does not have to sign like this. And actually, I'm sorry, just real quick, I did want to mention one more thing. Regarding Costa-Hawkins, there is yet again another initiative to undo it completely. The AIDS Healthcare Foundation, Michael Weinstein, has done. Okay, before I go to this, every year you see the dialysis initiative. So each year, there have been 3 of them so far. Each time, SEIU, it's labor union, spends about $15 to $20 million and slaps that on the ballot to change the way dialysis stuff works in California. The dialysis companies have each time spent about $100 million to stop it, which makes me think, how much money is there in dialysis? But anyways, like, wow, okay, I guess that's okay. But like, okay, that's still not worth compromising. But $300 million. And I hate to say it, that's what he's doing to us on these, right? The first one, he spent about $15 to $20 million. He tried a couple of years ago. We spent a lot of money. I forget how much, like 5 to 10. There was a lot. C.A.R. put a lot of money. I want to say at least $5 million. And it stopped. He reintroduced a more moderate version of it that also failed. He spent about 20. He's going to do it again, most likely, spend another 20 to 25 million. And then our side, which means CAA and the big development companies, the big companies behind the California Business Roundtable and us will end up spending, because each race total has been about 70 to 80 million dollars to try to stop it. And so chances are it'll be another 70 to 80 million dollars to stop it. It's been stopped every time because there's some really strong arguments to stop it. And in a state in which most Democrats are sort of faceless to their people, Governor Newsom actually does oppose the complete repeal of Costa-Hawkins. And so he is used heavily in all this advertising in each of the campaigns and most likely would be used in it again. But it still means spending a lot of money. And so that is another initiative that is going to be on the ballot that we're going to have to.
And out of the 3, I think this one is the worst. And it's called the Justice for Renters Act. Oh, they're blatant about it. Yeah. So it would get rid of Costa-Hawkins, meaning any property, multifamily could be slapped.
Single family
and single family homes, no protection for single family homes anymore. But if a local, government decided to do that, they could implement it, and housing development or building of apartments would just shut down.
Yeah.
Who wants to build one when it's going to be subject to rent control and the dollar won't pencil out.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what happens. I mean, sometimes people introduce these initiatives with the goal of trying to leverage something out of the legislature, and they're not necessarily serious about going all the way. Like, oh, maybe if I do this, they'll give in and give me some things. But there's nothing to really give in on Costa-Hawkins, right? The Department Association and us are just kind of no to changes to that. And so there's no room there. So it's going to move forward. We've been successful. The straight repeal, by the way, the 2 biggest arguments that tend to be successful is like, I know a lot of people in Los Angeles, which as I said, where I spent most of my time, who frankly would probably be sympathetic to some of this rent control. But when you say, oh, so if you move out of your house because you had a job for a year and you decide, oh, I'll rent it out, well, you may not be able to go back in now. Right? Like either the rent control says that's it, or you have to pay that person $50,000 to go back into your own home just because you took a job for a year and decided to rent out your property. It makes even the most liberal person really uncomfortable that maybe since my home now is not, I'm not going to have freedom in my home.
And how many of you folks do have some sort of rental property in the room?
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so we're looking at maybe 20% of the people in the room, 25%. So.
Right, and that could be removed though, unless it's vacant.
That's right.
Yeah, everybody's selling their rental property, so you might have a transactional boom for a little bit.
Are there any other questions for Sanjay? It might be the last time he's here, except for another year, maybe.
Oh, and last thing, and so far it hasn't backfired. If you're the audience that does, but you can always text me, preferable to email 626, still 626, 626-660-6515. Again, 626-660-6515. If you do text me, just identify who you are. All right,
so
thank you.
You stay up there. just move over just a little bit. And then Ling, all these things that Sanjay talked about are so important, and the Realtor Action Fund is something that is also so important to you all, because it's with that money that we are able to do our lobbying, elect people who might be friendly to our industry, that type of thing. So before he leaves, this is what a really great piece. I don't know if you saw it. By the way, Albert. Yeah.
Right here, right here.
So if we could put this one up now, if you have this piece in 2022, all the work that your Sacramento lobbyist did for you, say the average realtor over $60,000 or $10,000, and each firm over $16,000. So if you break it down, and that's what I wanted you to talk about, Sanjay, is some of this breakdown about preserving dual agency and that kind of thing. But this is how important this is. They are saving you money.
A little extra pickup. Yeah, and so this is it describes again many of the savings that, and actually not in this case, not just savings, but actually a positive impact from Cali to Bay. But the kinds of things we do, which are constant fights to protect various things that go into your day-to-day business. And a good one here is preserving mortgage interest deduction. You might think that that's never going to be questioned. Not this year, strangely enough, maybe because we fought it every other year. They try to strip away in California the protection for second homes or investment homes. They always try to do that here. And we fought that every time. And so that's one of the things, exposures to lawsuits. Point of sale retrofits is always a war for us constantly. Everybody sees all that equity sitting there. And they think, well, when you sell the house, what's the big deal if you put $3,000 more on to fix something? We have to fight that every time. And so these are all examples of the kind of things that you may not feel it directly because you're not in your pocketbook, but if we didn't do these things, you would. Thanks.
Thank you, Sanjay.
Yeah.
Okay, do you guys know how lucky you are to have Sanjay here today with us? Many of you probably don't know it. When I go to C.A.R, I'm not standing right next to him. I'm on the bottom of this far back room sitting there listening to him to talk. He is so knowledgeable about everything that he said today, and he's not kidding. Okay, he's not kidding. Everything he said very seriously. So when we first started working as a realtor and become a new agent, we think things are very simple, right? We just buy and sell. Did you know all the legal issues that comes up behind the scene at Sacramento? All the things that they're trying to stop for us, California Association of Realtors try to stop or try to push for us for the betterment of our profession, right? So a lot of times that they're, if you hear about the federal, I don't think you talk about the 1031 exchange. They were trying to stop that too. They didn't want to do 1031 exchange. Biden's regime says, we want taxes. Every time you sell, we want you guys to pay taxes. And we're able to stop that. And California was very strong about talking about that too. So, there's a lot of things behind the scene that you guys might not know. And I didn't know when I first started. I was so naive and innocent at that time. And I was thinking, wow, this is a simple job. We just buy and sell property for our clients. So how does all this come across? We have to donate to our California Association and our National Association. We have to help them. Without us supporting them, they don't have the funds to fight for every issue that come up. Sanjay just talk about cost. That's how much I hate it. We need money. That money doesn't come from the sky. It doesn't drop off the sky. It doesn't grow on trees, right? Chinese always say we have a back tree, old money tree, but we don't. So all this comes from donation from realtor members like you. And we truly believe that this is very important. And I want to acknowledge some people in the room that has donated to Cause of Doing Business, which is a requirement for our directors in our association. So every director that we go to C.A.R. has to be at least $197. And I think a lot of you are, could you please stand up? Okay, so that is some of you. Yeah, thank you very much. And then we also have the California major donor, which is $449. Anybody here with that? I think we do. Yes, see? And we also have NAR Sterling, which is $1,000. I think a couple of you are Sterling. And for some reason, people don't like to donate the crystal as much, 2,500. But there is people who donate over $5,000, and which is Pauline Lamb. And our association is also a major donor, and I am also a major donor as well. Yeah, we love to donate money, right? But because we believe in everything that Sanjay said today. So today, I'm asking you very sincerely to help us to donate $20, not much, just $20. And the reason we're doing this because we're helping C.A.R. to have some funds, and C.A.R. is asking us to donate $20 on how many members?
109 members total.
109 or 190?
09.
109. That's not much, right? So if all of you can help us donate $20, we make halfway, right? So at least we show them that we care. So please help us out and fill out the $20 today, before lunch and before you leave. Okay, we're gonna collect money from you.
Just to be clear that we already have 750 people contribute to the IF already. So we need another 109 contributors to make it, I think we move up to 26% level.
And I just wanted to give, to talk about you because it is a lot of money, meaning that the associations have, but it costs a lot to do it. And it's not, and I don't mean to smear. It's good you brought up 1031 exchanges because one thing we did in conjunction, but independent of NAR, which meant it was funds that basically come from you, is on 1031 exchanges in congressional areas, because obviously we have one of the biggest Democratic congressional districts, state congressional caucuses in the country, was run digital ads in their districts, run digital ads where they were so that their constituents were seeing this thing about 1031 exchanges and how, because it does particular harm to California. 1031 exchanges are much more popular here than anywhere else in the country. And so we brought it home to them. This is a California issue. This is not just a national 1031. This is California. And so, yeah, there's some advocacy. I said, you may not, unless you live there and open up your, computer and you're like, oh, what's this about 1031 exchanges? That was us, talking about those kinds of things. So it's, it's very important. And I'm going to say, like, this is the year I was going to make, really kind of get involved too, it turned out to be really legally complicated. So they're still working it out. By law, I cannot give to state candidates in California.
Right.
So we have to, when you give the money, it sort of is parsed out among all the different things. So I have to figure out how to just get the federal.
There was also capital gain taxes. And there was also another one with step up I can't remember what
SALT, which for everybody, which is the deductibility of I don't know if Zach talked about it at all, but state and local income tax, which especially affects states like us, California, New York. The one good thing, by the way, for a federal is as their prices finally go up, partly because Californians are moving there, places like Texas, Florida, other places, the red states are starting to feel the SALT.
We also use the money to help our local and our state candidates, right? We support them. The one that we support recently is our Vice Mayor, John Wu, who is also a member of ours. We do support our own people, okay? Just in case you don't know that, we do. And I also want to recognize before we go to lunch is ready. There is 2 key contacts sitting here for our Assemblymember Fong. One is Dora Leon, right there, standing in red. And the other one is our very own Thomas Wong. And they're very working hard to bring issues to let our assemblymen, like Fong, aware of all the things that we're opposing. Okay, now we're for it, we're opposing that happens. Okay, so please thank Sanjay for his time here today. And we'll see you in next month. Are you gonna be there?
NAR in Anaheim, and NAR is also in Anaheim this year. And once again, if you are on the receiving end of a red alert from us, please respond. It's in all seriousness, those money is important, of course, but it's those voices, those responses that are our power in Sacramento. I'll do a second.
Yeah, I was just.
Quick story. I was on a call with some business people on other business groups, mortgage bankers, I can't remember, escrow, title, some other groups. I forget, I even forget what the bill was. And we're all talking about the bill, and they were all wanting to get us to be opposed. And I think at that point we were like, we don't know. We're still figuring it out if it affects us. And then one of them goes, but if you did oppose, would that mean like a full-blown oppose, all your people calling and emailing and doing all that? And we're like, well, yeah, if it's that kind of oppose, we would. And I know I'm being facetious here, but banks are not getting their bank tellers and loan officers to call. All right, they're not getting their borrowers to call. Right? And nobody like we have in every community. Have people with a voice and making noise. We're the only business group that can do that. The closest to us is labor, meaning labor surpasses us, but no one else in terms of our ability to get people to actually respond. So red alerts are very important.
I was just gonna ask Sanjay, because I've been asked this by members. Do the red alerts come across as text messages yet? They do. Okay.
Some do. It's complicated because of California law. We might have to do something where we might have to get explicit consent.
Yeah, because we like just hitting that number when it pops up. Yeah, so okay, let's work on that.
Yeah.
So
and anybody that gives us $20 today will get a star. And I promise not to throw it at you.
we're very serious about this $20. Okay, Sanjay, would you like to say plans for lunch? Oh, okay. See how that's how busy he is. Thank you very much, Sanjay. So lunch is in the next room is a lunch box. So you're welcome to pick up your food and come back because we have more program for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, we're gonna get started again, and feel free to continue with your lunch and eat the cookies, and I probably have potato chips in my teeth. Next up, we have Sarah Wiltfong, who is the Director of Advocacy and Policy for the LA County Business Federation. And I think I explained earlier that the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors is a member of the LA County BizFed, that's what we call it. And so are probably another, I don't know, 7 other associations, local association of realtors. So we're very, very heavily represented in this organization, and they are a partner with regard to our lobbying efforts at the local and state level and federal level. So, you know, this organization was started over 15 years ago by about 3 or 4, 5, 7 groups, I think, because I was there. And because there was no representation for businesses at the county level, and we were always being beat up by big labor and that kind of thing. So this was started. I think Sarah will give a little more background on that, but without further ado, I will introduce Sarah Wiltfong from BizFed.
But I think Jim did a great job giving a bit of a background of who we are. But just to continue with what he said, we actually started in 2008 with about 40 business associations that represented about 68,000 employers in Los Angeles County. So you can see on our screen, this is our logo. We're now 15 years in, which we're very excited about. And we are now a massive grassroots alliance of more than 240 diverse business organizations, representing about 410,000 employers with 5 million employees in Southern California. So those associations include about 60 chambers of commerce all throughout LA County, of course, the realtors. like you guys, also several trade associations, anywhere from the restaurant association to retailers to building industry, construction, fashion, dry cleaners, any type of association that represents any sort of trade, as you can imagine, is part of our massive diverse coalition. And our goal is to advocate for policies and projects that strengthen our regional economy. So just quickly, I work for BizFed, which is this blue logo up here. It is our advocacy organization. This is where we advocate at the state, federal, and local level on behalf of you guys and the broader business community to make sure the business voice is heard. But we also have an institute, which is our 501c nonprofit think tank, which takes a lot of the massive issues that we're facing over here in our advocacy organization and tries to find bipartisan solutions. And we also have a PAC that endorses in all 88 cities across LA County. In fact, we're the only PAC that endorses in all 88 cities of LA County. So now we're getting to the reason why I'm here. I am here to present the results of our 2023 Pulse poll. So we started this poll at the beginning of our organization. 15 years later, we're still doing it. And the idea is to get a snapshot of what the business community feels, sorry, how should I describe this? It's a snapshot of the top issues that are impacting the business community in our region. So we asked them a series of questions, and we're just trying to get a handle of what their top issues are, what their top concerns are, and that way we can share with elected officials and groups like yours so we can kind of get a better understanding of what the top priorities are in the business community in our region. So just really quickly, when we released our poll, this is how many respondents. We had 645 business respondents. They represented about 208 different associations. 50% of them were the top decision makers, meaning they were the CEOs or the executive directors of their businesses, and about 20 different industries were represented. So here are the results. I'm going to scroll through this. So one of the first things that we discovered is that economic pessimism is up. This may not be a terrible surprise, but for several years now, optimism has significantly decreased over the years, and it has pessimism has increased. In fact, nearly twice as many respondents this year reported feeling pessimistic about the economy in 2023 compared to 2022. And the jump in economic pessimism from 2021 to 2023 is nearly fourfold. So as you can see from the graph, there's a significant increase among economic pessimism, and then there is a significant drop in optimism. Workforce forecasts, the majority of our respondents said that they expect no change in their workforce size, which is actually pretty concerning. We always want our workforce to grow. So 26% did say that they were expecting to grow in size this year. 15% said they were going to reduce, but a majority, about 50%, said that they were going to expect no changes in their workforce this year. Another big takeaway, the cost of doing business. An overwhelming amount of our respondents said that doing business in California was way more expensive in 2023 than what they had originally anticipated. In fact, 80% thought that it was more costly to do business this year than they had projected originally. Another question we actually asked this year, this was the first time we had asked it. It's actually kind of an interesting question we probably should have asked many years ago, but we had asked, what would be some of the reasons that you would consider leaving California? We've constantly heard about this business exodus that's happening in California. So we asked the business leaders, if you would consider leaving California, what are the top reasons that would cause you to leave? Probably should be no surprise, 72% said the cost of living here. It is so high here. That is one of the reasons why they would leave. 66% said taxes and fees. 57% said labor costs. 52% said the regulatory environment. 49% said crime would be one of the top reasons that they would leave. 47% said homelessness, and 36% said housing and land use issues being one of the reasons why they would leave. On the flip side, we asked, well, what would keep them, what would cause them to stay in California instead of leaving? And also, it should be no surprise, top response was weather. Weather was the main reason why businesses said that they would stay in California as opposed to leaving. Family ties was another big one. And then there's a couple other items like consumer-based, diverse workforce, a skilled workforce, moving costs, and industry clusters are some of the reasons that they would stay here in California. But they said overwhelmingly that weather and family ties are the only reasons why that they would stay. No other economic reason. So 2023 top issues, we always ask, we give them a list of about 30 different categories of concerns that they could potentially have. So what are their top concerns? What are the top concerns that the business community feels in 2023? Number one is taxes and fees. Probably should be of no surprise. Crime is actually the number 2 concern among the business community within the LA region. Inflation is number 3, and homelessness is number 4. In this next graphic, it kind of shows the ranking of the 15 years that we've been doing this. So you can see from the top, taxes and fees has been number 1, a vast majority of the time that we've been doing this poll. Over the last couple of years, it has dipped to number 2, then number 5, but now it's taken the number 1 place again. Crime has traditionally been much, much lower of a priority, but over the past 2 to 3 years, it has jumped to our number 2 and number 3 spot, respectively. Inflation, we just added as a question last year. It's number 4 this year, and then number 3 this year. Homelessness traditionally has actually been much lower on the priority list for the first several years that we did this. However, for the last 3 years, it was the number 1 issue among the business community. But this year it jumped to the number 4 spot, mostly because of a lot of the ways that LA City and LA County and Long Beach are continuing to address this issue. And then energy and fuel costs, which has traditionally also been lower on the priority list, is the number 5 this year. So a couple of other issues that the business community has tackled for quite some time that we just asked about. One is al fresco outdoor dining. I'm sure you guys are familiar with al fresco dining. It's the outdoor dining. It allows businesses to operate outdoors and sometimes in parking lots or maybe untraditional areas so they can serve more consumers. And this was obviously especially popular during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then there was a lot of concerns about, potentially rolling those permits back after everything opened up again. So we asked our respondents whether or not they felt that al fresco dining should remain intact even after the pandemic. And of course, overwhelmingly, they said yes. 39% thought that al fresco dining should be expanded, and 37% that it should be at least maintained to the same degree that it was during the pandemic because of how helpful it was to our restaurants. 4-day work week, we thought this would be a fun question to ask since Congress was considering changing the work days. Instead of it being a 5-day work week, it'd be a 4-day work week, and anything above that would be overtime. So we asked our members what they thought of that. And basically, these were their early reactions. 43% thought a 4-day work week would increase costs, 40% thought it would disrupt planning, and 30% said it would decrease productivity. However, at the same time, 26% did believe that it would improve a work-life balance. So for whatever that's worth, they thought. We asked about remote work expectations, and about 90% of respondents expected employees to work remotely at least some of the time during the next 12 months. 74% were convinced they would remain with a hybrid model. 15% said fully remote, and then there was about 10% that was still unsure. Of course, this might have significant implications with commercial buildings and office spaces and whether or not they're going to continue to be able to lease out their buildings. We also asked about public transportation, and it said, although recent headlines trumpeted a record-setting 10% surge in Los Angeles and Los Angeles bus and rail ridership, only 4% of respondents feel local public transportation is safe. So about 50% of our respondents choose not to take public transportation because they don't believe it's safe at all. 31% thought it was somewhat safe, and then about 15% were unsure. And then finally, we asked what is the most business-friendly, and then also what is the least business-friendly city within the LA region. So this year, Santa Clarita was voted as the most business-friendly city in the Los Angeles region. Nearly 1/4 of respondents ranked the city of Santa Clarita as the best place to do business in Los Angeles County. When asked what factors drove their votes the most business-friendly city, 31% of respondents said they do business there, and 27% said they know people who do business there, and that's the reason why they came to that conclusion. Now, can anybody guess what is the least friendly business city? Yeah, You are not wrong. That did not take long for you to answer. The city of Los Angeles was ranked least business friendly with the same share of votes it received in the 2022 poll. So actually, traditionally, city of Los Angeles is ranked as the least business friendly city within the region. When asked what factors drove their votes for the least business friendly city, 29% of respondents said they know people who do business there, or said that they do business there, and 22% said that they know people who do business there. And then also here's another ranking. It says Los Angeles, 56% of our respondents ranked Los Angeles as the least business friendly, while 8% said Santa Monica, 7% said unincorporated Los Angeles County, 6% West Hollywood, and then 2% Beverly Hills and Compton. And then just a little bit of an overview of our participants. The California Chamber of Commerce was the most representative in this poll with 50 respondents, Los Angeles Area Chamber 42, Santa Clarita Valley Chamber 39. And let's see, I think there's the Southland Regional Association of Realtors was 20. Hopefully we'll see you guys on this list next year as we do this poll again. And then this is our co-chairs who helped lead our committee: Joanne McClaskey with the Industry Business Council, Genevieve Morrell with the West Hollywood Chamber of Commerce, Veronica Perez with Veronica Perez Associates, Tom Ross with Swing Strategies, and Holly Schroeder with the Santa Clarita Economic Development Corporation all had a hand in developing this poll. So that's just an overview of the poll and the presentation. So I'd like to open it up to everybody here, see if anybody has any questions.
Oh, come on, all that information. Yeah. Come on. Okay. Lee Chow, our president.
By the way, our ad is very active at BizFed as well. Did you introduce yourself as a BizFed person?
Yes. Well, I didn't tell him I was on the board or anything like that,
but you are.
And advisory committee. What else? I don't know. Sarah's always wanting me to do things too.
Thank you. He's very responsive. So.
But you guys probably don't know who BizFed is. Did anybody know what they really do? No, right?
I explained it.
I thought you did too.
In
Do you want me
language.
Okay. Okay, go for it.
Is a self-started group of people who want to fight for things that happened throughout Los Angeles County. And they're very good. I don't know whether you have acknowledged or attended or any of their events, but they fight for causes. They fight for causes from everything: air pollution. I think the other one I was on was a cable line, Wi-Fi issues, internet issues. They fight for everything that possibly happened in our life. Okay, not just real estate. There was one that was kind of interested. I want to ask you what happened to that about warehousing, commercial warehousing. There was a law that was going to pass forbidden something. I can't remember what it was, but did that ever go through? Because we do commercials, right? You know, they find a lot of real estate issues that maybe California Association might not catch it, but BizFed catch it local wise right here here. So they have talked about a warehouse. They were trying to pass through that. I forgot about trucks and going through. I forgot what it was, but it was very important.
Yeah,
remember?
I do remember. So there's a couple warehouse bills. I think what you're referring to was there was this one bill that was being considered earlier this year. It was also being considered last year, and it was we called it like a de facto ban on warehousing. So basically, a warehouse could not be built within, I believe it was 1,000 feet of a quote unquote sensitive receptor, meaning if a warehouse was within 1,000 feet of a school, of a hospital, of a residential area, or something similar, a park, they couldn't build the warehouse there, which of course would be really detrimental to our logistic industry. It's continually trying to grow. It'd also be detrimental to mixed use housing because there's several warehouses that are built alongside, housing units and retail and things like that. And so this bill was being considered within the assembly. We worked with a variety of different organizations and were able to defeat it earlier this year. We expect it to come back again. It comes back kind of every year, and it makes it print like farther and farther each time in the process. But yeah, what you're referring to is what we called it was basically a ban on building any new warehouses within California.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it's BizFed actually a legal consultant, right?
Mhm.
Or another option.
We pay your dues.
Yes.
You are a member, as a member of this organization, you are a member of BizFed. West End Gabriel Valley Association of Realtors or Realtors pays, no.
Yep.
Yeah.
I shouldn't
undermine
Yeah. You are already a member. There you go. Yes, exactly. We'll take your money still, but you don't have to.
It's phenomenal. You get to sit down with like IBM CEOs, big CEOs, and you make decisions together, collaborating for the greater good of businesses. So thank you for still going strong. And I mean, I wish I could still be at the table. Maybe someday I can. But everything that is being done here, it's a strong arm, like you said, of this association. So with that said, are you still doing, did you mention the Busy Award? Are you still doing the Busy Awards?
We are. In fact, we had the Busy Awards in June of this year, and we awarded 19 different organizations and elected officials. It's basically what we call our Oscars. It's the Busy BizFed, where we honor business leaders throughout the LA region and elected officials throughout the LA region that are really doing a lot to stand up for you guys and the business community at large. So we have that in June, but we absolutely will have another one next year in June as well, and all are welcome to attend.
Does the association like this one qualify?
Yes, absolutely. You can totally put an application in if you want to put your name in the hat to be awarded. Of course, we'd love to consider you. And I'd love to maybe even consider you being part of the committee process as well. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure. Thank you.
I just had someone ask me if we still have that commission or committee on homelessness. And can you elaborate, because it's a very obviously with regard to the real estate community, a high priority to see an end or at least a curve of homelessness. But can you elaborate on some of the things that BizFed is doing with regard to that crisis?
Sure. So in 2018, so it was our 10-year anniversary, we launched what was called our Anti-Poverty Commission, where our Anti-Poverty Committee. And it's where we're dedicating our resources to lift 1 million people out of poverty over the next 10 years. So by 2028, we have a goal of getting 1 million Angelinos out of poverty. It's not just homelessness. It's, everybody, trying to lift everybody up out of poverty. And we do that by tackling a lot of policies that, of course, make it more expensive to be here and trying to improve our housing stock and all that. This year, as our 15-year anniversary, so the halfway point of that initiative, we launched what was called our Homelessness Action Committee, since homelessness was now the #1 issue 3 years in a row for the business community, and also was considered a state of an emergency by both Karen Bass and Rex Richardson in Long Beach. We decided to launch this action committee where we bring all the businesses together, the business community together from all across the region, to start looking at what resources can we bring to the table to help tackle this issue. So we're considering, different policy discussions and things like that, supporting Project Home Key, working with the Hotel Association to see, how they can be leveraged and used. But a lot of it is just, we had homelessness shelters reach out to us like, well, can you guys help us with security cameras? Well, we have like Lowe's and Home Depot who are members. And so we connected them to Lowe's and Home Depots, and they were able to, provide them like the security cameras and stuff they needed for their shelter. So that's kind of the stuff we do. It's not necessarily like we can't solve the entire homelessness crisis, but it's the idea of like, well, we have so many different businesses, so many different groups who are members of BizFed, how can we use all the unique things that they bring to the table to help address this issue? So if any of you guys are interested in being a part of that committee or part of that process, of course, we'd love to give you a seat at the table as well. But that's just one of the initiatives that we're doing to try to tackle homelessness in our area.
Thank you, Sarah. Are there any other questions over here? Hold on.
Yeah,
That was a strike.
it's a great question.
Let me repeat it. So the question was, how do how do issues get to BizFed for them to consider?
A position on
A
it
position,
for
yeah.
action, yeah. So we consider ourselves an entirely member-driven organization. So we have 235 business organizations like yours who are members of BizFed. And it takes 2 members to bring an issue to us. So just like whether it's you and maybe the greater Los Angeles realtors can come together, like, there's this bill that we see that's really problematic and we'd like BizFed's involvement. You can bring it to us, and we have 12 different policy committees, one from land use and real estate, one tackling energy issues, another tackling water issues, and pretty much any type of policy issue you can imagine, we have a committee on that. So you would take that issue, bring another person with you. I know it can get a little complex, so hopefully it makes sense to you. You bring it to the committee, we'll vet it, and then we bring it to our full board. Our full board takes a look at all the issues that our policy committees vet, and it takes a 2/3 vote of our board to take a position on anything. And the reason why we do that is because we want to make sure that the whole vast majority of the broader business community really cares about this issue and has the same opinion on this issue. So once our full board takes a position on it, then we can do any type of advocacy we want. It includes submitting letters to state legislators or local government, letting them know our support or opposition. It includes press releases, media, all the actions, showing up and testifying at hearings, pretty much trying to bring people to show up and testifying at hearings. Pretty much any type of advocacy effort you can imagine, we'll do once our board takes a position on it. So hopefully that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and Sarah can attest to this. The realtors are very active. We take our issues to BizFed all the time. And I might also say that, and I think you mentioned that there's a political action committee. And so we actually help vet candidates with the BizFed PAC. So there are also realtors that are representative, when we do the vetting of candidates through BizFed. So it truly is a partnership. Well, any other questions? Okay, last one.
Jim is your representative on our board.
You can take it to Albert. What it would do is probably go through your legislative committee first. And then if they direct me to take it to BizFed, or you have other representatives on BizFed committees, you can do it that way too. I mean, I see Tomas, I see William-Mc, I see who else do I see? Anyway, so yeah, Dora, Lucia Tab, yeah, Pauline. So any of these folks that are involved can bring an issue.
Okay, and just one last point, I just want to share that on your website, you do have a 10-point plan of housing affordability. That's really great information for everyone here to follow that 10-point plan.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I can send over to Jim that one sheet. We can send that to you guys.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Well, Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Great. And by the way, that information that came from you guys. We sent out this poll amongst the members, and like Sarah said, hopefully we'll see West San Gabriel Valley realtors up on that top tier of participation in the poll. Am I?
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Okay. Well, we've been waiting patiently, and our special guest is here, and he's gonna probably anchor this show because all the other speakers have concluded. But why don't you, Assemblymember, why don't you come up this way? But special guest, Assemblymember Mike Fong, who represents their little city that West San Gabriel Valley Realtors also, serves. And we're so happy he's here, and he's going to say a few words. I know he's pressed for time, but we appreciate you being here today. Please give him a great round of applause.
Good afternoon. How's everyone doing here today? This is amazing. Is that
It's good to see each and every one of you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to join you here at the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors. Honor and privilege to join you here today for your annual legislative day and to provide some quick updates as to what's happening up in Sacramento. And thank you so much to Lane, to Pauline, to Dora, to Tomas, to all the leaders here. I don't know who's a leader, to everyone here. I was just having lunch with a number of folks a few minutes ago.
Elaine, and Jim. Really appreciate the opportunity to connect here today with each and every one of you. And through legislative forum, I just had a big presentation from the BizFed. So thank you to the BizFed for that presentation as well. Appreciate the work that you're doing here in California and Southern California. But thank you so much to each and every one of you for making the time to join us here today. Really, for all of you as realtors in the real estate business, it's critical work you're doing to uplift the California dream and the American dream. And that's the work that you do each and every day. As a councilor, Senator Menta, thank you for your leadership in Oakland City of Rosemary, to Honorable Vincent Chang, former elected official of Monterey Park. Thank you for your leadership and service, and to all of you, to Lucia, and to all the folks gathered here today, to the Honorable Eugene Sun from San Marino. You got an all-star crew here, Mr. Tran as well, and to everyone. So thank you for your service and leadership. So there's been a lot happening in Sacramento. Just got back yesterday. We are usually in Sacramento Monday through Thursday. Next week I'll be there Monday through Friday as we wrap up this legislative session. As many of you know, I was elected just last year, February 2022, to finish up the term of Assemblymember Chow when he was appointed to become HR. I was around to be elected in February 2022, and with the voters of the WSGVR Valley elected to a full term last November. To the Honorable Gene Starr, good to see you again. Thank you for being here as well. And thank you to the first year the governor signed 4 more bills into law. These bills deal with climate change, community college access, ethics training for local elected officials, and expanding disability access. We brought back nearly $30 million in state funding to the 49 Assembly District, funds that will go towards parks improvements, facilities upgrades, and community centers. So we live in Alhambra in the West San Gabriel Valley, brought back a number of resources. Prior to the Assembly, I had the chance to serve on the Community College Board to expand opportunities for college access, college affordability, job training programs, and have worked in local government for a number of years. Here in the last few weeks of the legislative session, it's a hectic time. And Councilor Sanjay knows this as well in her day job. It's a very much a hectic time as we look at the last few weeks, and many of you track the legislation in Sacramento. I was at your forum in Sacramento at the Peter, so many of you may have been there that day. And it's so good to see you up there advocating there. And then at the reception that evening at the Sacramento Convention Center as well. So thank you guys for all your service and leadership. Earlier this year, I was honored to be appointed as the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee. As the chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, we look at the coordination between the community colleges. There's 113 community colleges in California, our California State University system where there's 23 campuses, and our University of California campuses where there's 10 campuses as well. And some of my priorities include making sure that all Californians have access to quality higher education. Very honored that my staff has joined me here today, Jennifer Tang, my district director, and Joe, our intern. Thank you so much. Joe's a student at the University of California, Irvine. And so when we look at students like Joe, who's in our university systems, how do we continue to expand opportunities for Californians? We're working closely on the EC Compact and the CHU Compact to expand graduation opportunities for our students, to expand the number of opportunities for students in California to attend our schools. And so with the UCLA, with UC Berkeley, with UC San Diego, we're pushing the needle to make sure that by 2030, 80% of our students attend those universities come from California. Right now, UCLA has 68% of their students from California and 32% from out of state. And so this is something we're going to continue to expand opportunities for Californians. Because we know that getting a college degree and access to quality workforce training is an opportunity to lift folks out of poverty and to good paying jobs. And that's why this year, at a really robust legislative package with our small but mighty team, we introduced a student-centered bill package and expanding college opportunities and supporting student representation. Also have a bill that would help student members of community college boards make their voices heard in the governing process. I'm proud to say that Assembly Bill 1541 was just signed by the governor a few weeks ago. So thank you to the governor for signing AB 1541 to ensure that all community college student trustees have a voice on their community college boards. Also, I've also introduced bills that cover workforce development. So as we look at the future of real estate appraisers, the future of real estate here in California, workforce training and making sure that you have the critical service needs and then employees to make sure that we have opportunities to continue to expand those opportunities. Also have bills on language access, public safety, ethnic studies. And then following the tragic mass shooting in Monterey Park this year, I introduced a couple bills on gun safety. We have Assembly Bill 732, which would address a huge backlog of 24,000 cases in which someone who's been convicted of a crime, like a felony or a serious crime, that they may not own a gun. And those 24,000 people in California are on the prohibited persons database. And that database is accessible by law enforcement agencies and agencies to make sure that they are accessing the information. But having that coordination between the California Department of Justice is critical. And so this bill will strengthen the process for removing guns from those who've been convicted of crime that should not own them. The LA Times just did a nice editorial on this bill a couple of weeks ago. So we're going to continue to advocate for Assembly Bill 732. A number of the bills are in suspense, and we're going to continue to advocate with Senate appropriations to get a number of them hopefully out. Also, Assembly Bill 733, which will prohibit state and local agencies from selling firearms back to the public. And we got this idea from Supervisor Solis and her actions following the Monterey Park tragedy. She put a motion in at the LA County Board of Supervisors to make sure that we are not putting more guns back into the street. The LA County Probation Department was going to sell 300 more guns back to the streets immediately a few days after the Monterey Park tragedy. And so Assembly Bill 733 will prevent state and local agencies from selling firearms back to the public. I also authored a letter with dozens of other state legislators, nearly 50 of my colleagues, urging our president and federal government to do more around gun safety issues. These are issues that we're going to work more on going forward. After all, California's gun safety laws mean nothing if dangerous weapons can still be brought here from other states with less strict safety laws. And in our many diverse communities, our many immigrant communities here in the San Gabriel Valley and in California, we know that language access is critical in communities that are as diverse as Alhambra, Monterey Park, Rosemead, San Gabriel, Tampa City, San Marino, Arcadia, and throughout the San Gabriel Valley, Monte. And so I've introduced a couple of bills that would expand language access here in California. And one of them is Assembly Bill 1638, which will require local agencies to provide translation for official announcements during emergencies, such as a mass shooting or a natural disaster. But a certain percentage of that population speaks a language other than English. In communities like El Monte, like San Gabriel that we're in now, and other cities in my district, this can help save lives. This is something we're going to continue to advocate for and work with our partners on getting this done. I've also introduced Assembly Bill 1096 that will enable community colleges to offer courses in languages other than English, so that people who are not English proficient can still pursue their education and earn certificates into the workforce. Assembly Bill 1096 has been sponsored by many community college districts in California, and that would expand opportunities for our students to take classes in their native languages. So this is something we're working on. The LA Community College District, which includes East Los Angeles College and the city of Monterey Park, currently has about 7,000 students taking courses in a language other than English, taking courses in Chinese, in Spanish, in Russian, Armenian, and many other languages. So this is something we're going to continue to advocate for and increase the language access. For some Bill 163, I want to give a shout out to Jennifer Tang. She's actually the one that gave us an idea for that. Thank you, Jennifer, for expanding those opportunities to make sure that we have language access. And that's one of my goals is to really expand access to good jobs, quality education, and provide resources. Our office is open. Please reach out to us anytime. Jennifer, Joe, and our team, we're here to serve. And very honored that in terms of language access, we were able to secure nearly $11 million in state funding for this purpose on expanding language access. And $6.8 million of the $11 million will go towards increasing the number of court interpreters in our judicial system so that non-English speakers can participate fully in the legal system. I recently took a tour along with my team at the LA County Superior Court, and we shared this news with the judicial officers there. We really want to make sure that we continue to expand access to our judicial system to folks that need it and to create the pipeline of professionals for these important good paying jobs. $4 million of the $11 million will go towards red flag reduction and red flag education and outreach in languages other than English. We know that red flag laws are critical, so it encourages neighbors, friends, family members, coworkers to alert law enforcement of anyone who should not own a weapon because they are at risk of injuring themselves or others. And we know the red flag laws can help save lives. And in terms of the California Tree for All program, we know that there's more work to be done to expand those opportunities. We're just chatting at lunch right now, but that program was funds were fully allocated in 11 days. And so how do we continue to provide opportunities for Californians to have an opportunity to buy a home in California? We know that real estate here in the Square Valley and throughout California is very expensive. And so we need to continue to do more as a state, looking at first-time home buyer opportunities and really seeing what we can do to expand those opportunities with one of my colleagues, the California Tree for All program. You know, that's been a very successful program, and we need to continue to look at that program, look at the second part of it, and really look at how we could provide those opportunities for folks in the San Gabriel Valley and throughout California to have that California dream. In addition to district updates, locally at the district level, this past budget cycle, we're very honored that we brought back nearly $5 million of state funding for infrastructure projects, including a fire station, a park, athletic facilities, and a public library. So anything that we could do to expand public infrastructure here with our libraries, school facilities, fire station, we know the critical work that firefighters do, expanding our parks. This is something that we're going to continue to look at here in terms of infrastructure in the San Gabriel Valley. So that was a total of nearly $5 million for those types of projects. And it's been a year and a half already. It's been a whirlwind. We just hit our 18-month mark this past August 22nd. So this year and a half working with each and every one of you has been a tremendous opportunity. I think this is my second time I came here last year as well. And so it's so good to join you for your annual legislative day and then join you for the days up in Sacramento as well. My team's looking forward to continuing to participate in hosting events in partnership with you. We've hosted community tree planting events, community coffees in St. Gabriel and one day in Arcadia. We also had awards receptions for our Teacher of the Year. We honored 17 educators who do tremendous work in education throughout the San Gabriel Valley. We also honored amazing women leaders of the San Gabriel Valley, District 49, and we did that event as well. And so there's so much to celebrate. That's up in District 49 with all of you and your tremendous service and leadership. As we enter the fall and autumn season, I'm glad to share with you that we'll be hosting a college and career fair, a state appointments workshop, a Thanksgiving turkey drive, and a holiday toy drive. Some of you may have participated in our holiday toy drive last year, where we collected hundreds of toys and distributed them to nonprofit organizations here in the San Gabriel Valley, here in the cities such as San Gabriel and throughout Rosemead, throughout the different cities. The state appointments workshop, we'll be doing that with Secretary Ravenna. She's the appointment secretary for Governor Newsom. And we want to share those opportunities on how to access opportunities to serve on commissions, to serve your state government in a variety of roles. And many of you bring a lot of lived experiences and experiences that the state can learn from. So we would love to have you join us at those events. So please keep an eye out for emails and invitations to all those events. I'm always open to partnering with community members. Many of you know that if you send an invitation to our office and we can make it, we'll definitely be there. It's very important for us to be engaged in the community. And this is something that I make a very high priority in our office and myself to really make sure that we're present, that we're available, that we're being accessible. That's where when government's accessible and available to the public, that's when it makes it a more efficient democracy. And so this is something that we're going to continue to be out there. And I truly believe that government works best when we get to have meaningful conversations and what's happening with things up and down the state. And so really grateful to all of you for everything you do. Thank you so much. And really grateful for doing it today. Thank you so much. With that, I'd like to present a certificate of recognition to the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors. We can have the West San Gabriel Pauline or Lynn, the team come on up. And this is for all of you. On behalf of the California State Assembly, I'd like to present a certificate to the West San Gabriel Valley Realtors in honor of recognition of your 2023 Legislative Forum. Thank you for your dedication to the realtors of the West San Gabriel Valley and for fostering strong relationships among real estate professionals, civic leaders, and the community. Congratulations and best wishes.
Mr. Fong here. I want to thank you very much for attending our meeting today. I know that you have a very busy schedule and you did this for us because we're Western Gable Board. You came over, I know that you squeezed this in and I truly appreciate you here. We met him last year and it was the first time we met you. And throughout the time from last year to now, you have been very supportive of our Western Gable Board and all the issues that we have talked to you from our key contact, Thomas and Dora. And thank you for supporting us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you again. Please give the Assemblymember Mike Fong applause. You know, it's great. He was only supposed to come here for a quote unquote drop by. But boy, that was a great drop by. Okay, we're gonna wind things up. Albert, can you help me with the last piece of business? I do want to talk about one issue that we're dealing with locally, and that you heard Sanjay mention TOPA and COPA, but we have a local TOPA issue out of LA County. It's for the LA unincorporated areas. They're proposing a tenant opportunity to purchase act, which would mean that a tenant would have tenants in a building would have right of first refusal if the owner decided to sell the building. And in some cases, this could string out the process for up to a year. And because they have the right, that means they could actually give it to another entity if they are a nonprofit. If it falls through, they have to start the process all over again. It's a nightmare for realtors that might be selling multi-unit buildings. So we are fighting that. There are a number of realtor groups that have banded together and raised money along with C.A.R. and NAR, hire a consultant to put out ads to educate the public, educate those that have the ear of the County Board of Supervisors to kill this thing, and if not, try to get it amended so it's not as egregious. The first thing I want to say is the good thing is that they are making it for the unincorporated areas of Los Angeles. It started out to be a county-wide proposal, and we were able to say you can't take the right from the cities to, you can't dictate to the cities what they should do in their own jurisdiction. So we got that one. Last thing. First of all, I want to thank you all for coming. It was a great group, and I hope you enjoyed the program. But the last thing I want to do, thank you. And last thing I want to do is remind you, if you haven't heard of this, now all of you who gave $20 today, thank you very much. I don't want to. You want to throw the stars at them? Nate, presently. Take a star. Very good. Oh, we have some to pick up over there. We in the corner. If they can pass them, hey, that was good. They balance. Okay, but one of those of you that did contribute, help your office qualify for this program that we have. It's a contest that we have going on. You may have heard of it, but it's the Battle Royale. It's an office-to-office contest. There are 3 categories: offices with 1 to 4 agents, offices with 5 to 15 agents, and offices with 16 plus agents. And whoever in those categories has the highest participation of people contributing to the RAF will win an office lunch. And it's not, something like that. I mean, a smaller office could win up to $100 in a DoorDash gift card or Uber Eats gift card, and a larger office all the way up to 16 plus $250 for an office lunch. So take these back. You have until August 31st to tier the agents in your office and ask them to contribute to the RAF. $20 is all we ask. And it is. It's a silver star. It should be worth more than that. So Nate, why don't you give me the box? Put the box here. I'll take care of that, and then you can close this out.
Thank you, Jim. People are laughing at me saying that I said money does not grow on trees, right? Yeah, because I I always tell my daughter when she asks me money, and I say, I don't have money. Money doesn't grow on tree. You gotta go plant it yourself. So we are asking you for $20. I sound like a pitch. I know. Lauren nodding her head says $20, right? Okay, but we really need your help. C.A.R needs our help, and we are here to help them. And Lorraine complained. She said, I did not mention she had donated more than $10,000. So, you know, she's a high volunteer donator. We did not force her. We did not put a gun on her back and says you have to donate. So, you know, guys, understand that we do support all the things that everybody's talking about. BizFed is a great local individual association. Is it association? Are they calling themselves association? I think they're not association, are they? Federation, yes. But I joined their committee and they're really good. You guys have time, they're always on Zoom. So you can always go in and listen to it on Zoom. And C.A.R. Sanjay, I tell you, he just flew in from Sacramento for us. You know, he's not local anymore. He moved to Sacramento to be right next to the Capitol. And that from C.A.R. we don't have the funds to fly him here. So, from Washington, D.C., so he was on Zoom. So thank you. You guys enjoyed today's program?